last half of the game or anything like that. So to cut right to the chase, so nobody misinterprets anything, I like this game, but I didn't really love it anywhere near as much as I enjoyed the original. Even though the original did have flaws, it felt like a full meal. Hellblade 2 has some incredible moments, some cool action, and obviously great visuals, but I found it a bit unfulfilling from a narrative and gameplay standpoint. It doesn't build on the gameplay much from the original, which, can be fine. I don't need a sequel to become something it shouldn't be, but some combat and puzzle stuff actually feels like a step backwards. So, for two types of people. Number one, if you didn't like the first game, you're not going to like this one. If you dismissed it as a walking simulator, well, yep, there's actually more walking in this one. But if you're like me and you like the original game, flaws and all, I still think you should give this one a shot at some point. It was nice just to be back in the character's shoes, and they didn't
definitely took a huge step forward, and the developers deserve a lot of bonus points for that, and they definitely deserve a lot of bonus points for bringing back the Here Comes the Pain camera angle. The game looks great, and the gameplay is not too shabby either. On the surface, this gameplay might look exactly like 2K23, which looks exactly like 2K22, but let me tell you, that is not the case. The controls are the same, the base gameplay is the same, but it feels so much smoother, so much more polished, and it does feel a lot slower, but in a good way. It's one of those things where when you actually play it, that's when you'll see the difference, not in a video. But what I noticed the most about this gameplay is it is way harder. The CPU in this game fights on legendary difficulty like the fate of the universe is on the line, like they're sent back in time like the Terminator or some shit. I've never seen a CPU so aggressive, so crazy in a wrestling game. Whether the match just started or it's been 20 minutes and they reverse your ladder finisher and instead of winning they jump on you, the CPU is always tweaking, which is a very welcome challenge. Reversals are definitely harder and the timing window is so much shorter and the CPU is way smarter, but
that had its ups and downs, and it's been down for a while. This is a whole new game that kind of reimagines the original 1992 computer game classic that started it all. You don't need to have played the originals. This is just like a whole new survival horror adventure. So how is it? Well, it's got a lot of issues, and a lot of it feels like missed potential. It's messy, it's pretty short, and has some awkward combat and cutscenes. But I think some hardcore horror fans or some older school horror fans should consider giving it a shot at some point down the line, maybe at a better price point, because there's a couple of cool things I'll point out. Still, I ended up mostly disappointed. Now, let's get into it. So we've been playing a review copy here, and this footage has been captured running on PC and is spoiler-free. Now, you start the game by choosing to play as either classic character reimagined, Edward Carnby, or the team behind the most recent Jusant, Life is Strange, Remember Me, and Vampire, or Vampire, depending on how you say it. For years now, they've been making a nice blend, a nice variety of different games, and me personally, I really enjoyed what they did with Vampire. This game has been billed by the developers as kind of the heir to that game, continuing some of those ideas, something of a similar vein. So that's why I've kept my eye on this one. Let's just jump in and talk about this adventure. I am a bit mixed on it, but there are some really interesting concepts here if you like these types of games. And just so you know, we've been playing a review copy, and this footage was...
I don't think this game beats Baldur's Gate 3 or anything like that, but it is a fantastic game, but it has a lot of flaws at the same time. Some of them are easy to overlook, and others can be quite disappointing. For instance, Dragon's Dogma 2 is one of those games that just gets better and better the more you play. The more hours you sink into this game, the more you start to realize the complex mechanisms and the obscure mechanics and how they impact the game. And it can take you quite some time before the game clicks for you. But once it does, it's caught that Dark Souls moment where you're like, oh, this is how the game plays, and you absolutely fall in love with it. But on the opposite side of that coin is the fact that when you first start playing Dragon's Dogma 2, it's not that fun. There is a lot of running back and forth to quests because you don't understand that exploration plays a huge factor in the game. There is a lot of weight management and inventory management, and the enemy variety at the beginning of the game and throughout the game, but particularly at the beginning of the game, is abysmal because you don't run into a lot of...
That timeless quality is a tricky thing though, because publisher 505 Games has now come out with a remake of the game developed by Avant Garden, one that very faithfully recreates the original. That of course means that everything that made the original game great is present and accounted for in Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons remake as well, while some things have seen minor yet noticeable improvements. At the same time, given how faithfully the remake sticks to the source material, the question is going to be worth asking. Is it worth picking up if you own the original game? The areas where Brothers Remake makes the most noticeable improvements are, as you might imagine, the visuals. The original was never a graphical behemoth, and neither is the remake, but there's no doubting that the latter represents quite a step up in terms of pure visual quality. The original, of course, still looks quite pleasant, thanks to the fact that it was always
is back, sorta. You know, you're not the prince. This is an all-new adventure set in Persian mythology, and it's actually really great. A nice welcome surprise for January, like a good way to start the year if you like classic Prince of Persia or Metroidvanias. And just so you know, before we get into it, we've been playing a review copy from Ubisoft, and this footage here is spoiler free. Anything story you see here is just in the first few hours. And also, this footage was captured on PS5, but our capture equipment broke last minute right before making this video, so the quality is going to be a bit lower. I apologize. I gotta love capture cards. I feel like they all break. They're all faulty, especially from that one company. Anyway, this is an interesting game. I was skeptical because it looked like a spin-off or a reboot into something else. You know, like I said, you're not the classic Prince of Persia. Here, you're an immortal, a kind of badass warrior avenger, part of a group with the